All righty. Hello and welcome, everybody. We are kicking off the webinar for today, and very excited because, as Zach and I were talking prior to actually starting, there is a lot of things that you as a contractor might not know that could really make the difference in your stars as you're growing your business. And so the title for today is the 6 little known secrets to close more HVAC customers without spending money on ads. Now, if you're a contractor, you probably heard of local service ads. You probably might have advertised on Google ads or Facebook ads or Instagram ads. And the challenge with spending on ads is that many times it can be a lot of money and you don't always get the type of return that you're looking for. For example, I was speaking to a contractor the other day, was spending, I think, $12,000 all in their marketing, and they got a total of 12 phone calls. And so that's it's $1,000 a phone call, and that's just not a way to sustain yourself in business. And so today, really 3 objectives that we have. Number 1, it's to generate more leads, reduce your costs, and really grow your business. And so before we move on, Zach, any initial thoughts or welcomes for everyone who's viewing the webinar?
Yeah, so I totally agree. I think that I've had many a meeting with a HVAC owner or client and talking about ads and talking about their marketing, and you want to get the most out of the money that you're spending. And ads can give you some really good quick results, which can feel really great, but it doesn't give long-term success unless you're really doing it right. And that's what we're going to mention that a little bit later on. But I think the biggest thing, obviously, I think this is obvious, wants wants to have long-term success, not to have a success for 2 months and then fall apart, or success for a year and then get stagnant. You want to have that long-term success.
Yes, amen to that. Yeah, it's trying to be here for the long run. And cool. So we just had someone join. So welcome, Megan, to the webinar. We're just about to kick things off. And yeah, just some quick intros. But yeah, moving on to the next slide. I think the first place we wanted to start off with was a question. And this question is really important because marketing is an investment, and kind of like the stock market, making your picks and how much you put into the stock market will impact how much you have in retirement, right? You can pick all the right stocks and everything, but if you don't put enough into your 401k or your Roth, by retirement, even if you put in $10, even if you pick the best stock, I mean, you probably won't have enough to retire on. And so, the first question to think about is, how much money are you currently spending on your marketing, right? If you're going to be a wise steward of your capital, okay, how much capital am I deploying? And so, some things we've heard from contractors, 2 to 3K, or sometimes 5K, sometimes 10K a month. And really, this is all encompassing of what you're doing with your website. This could be community engagement. This could be partnerships. There's a lot of ways to market your business. But that cumulatively, like, how much is that spend? So, we'll take a moment just to pause, just to think about what that might be. And Zach, if you wanted to add some thoughts as well, while everyone's thinking, we can do that.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, I think that's we covered most of the thing. Is like, and I guess the next step here that we'll take is go a little bit more in depth, but you do want to make sure your marketing is focused, and like, you want to be intentional with your marketing, like you were saying, with investing. You don't want to just throw money out there into random investments. You do want to be intentional there. And what does the intentionality look like for marketing for your business? And I think that one of the things that we've talked about is having that marketing needs to be targeted at the goal that you want, which I think should be building your brand. So you want to be investing in the right places that are building that brand. And you want to be investing it in the right amount of money that you can build that brand, because marketing isn't everything. Like there are other things to building your brand, like having good text, having good people on the phone, doing all that stuff.
Mhm.
Because if your brand looks awesome visually, but then once they start talking to people, once customers start talking to people, that's all bad. You have to balance that
Mhm.
out.
Yep. And yeah, Megan just dropped in an amount, $5,000 to $7,000 monthly. Yeah, and that's a good spend. And I think also just to reverse engineer as well. One question that as a company we do this as well, but at the end of the year, reverse engineering. Now, if we want to go to this revenue level, like how much money do we need to invest to get there? So let's say we're currently a $2 million year company. We want to go to a $3.5 million year company. Let's project out what can we expect in terms of, return customers and everything. What's that baseline revenue? And then what's the difference between where we expect and where we need to go? That marketing budget needs to close that lead gap. And so it's I think when I've spoken to contractors in the past, sometimes they just feel like they're throwing money into a black hole when it comes to their marketing, but you can reverse engineer. If you have an email list, if you already know the different channels that you're in, you can begin to reverse engineer like how can I wisely invest so that I can close that gap. And so, it's really important to know. And I think the other thing too is, and I think you kind of indicated, Megan, like it's a range, right? There's certain times of the year when, maybe it's so busy that you don't need a market, right? It's like you're overwhelmed. Like, I don't know if I don't think I should spend, like, I'm just getting too many leads. And there's other times when it's slower. And so there's these ebbs and flows depending on the seasonality that you can also wisely invest. And so yeah, that's the first question and some initial thoughts.
Yep.
And then the second question, so we have this pie, you got 100% of your current marketing budget. Now, how much of that are you currently spending on ads? Like, is it, 50%? Is it 30%? Is it 10%? Is it 100%? Like, what's the range that you're spending on ads? And Zach, maybe other thoughts while people think, we can also quickly jump in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what is the trying to think through like what being going off of what you said previously with like, yeah, it is a range and there are different times that you want to spend a certain amount of money. So like, are you spending this same amount? Are you spending the same amount on ads every month, or is that adjusting? And going back to what I was saying with intentionality and building that brand, are you kind of thinking through that intentionally as far as if you are just overloaded with leads, some companies do get like that, then what are you doing to continue to build the brand that you can still provide the good service to all of your customers? What are some things that you can do there? Can you tone down ads but then build up in other areas in marketing that are going to help you build that brand, whether it's maybe it's wrapping a truck that you've been waiting to do, or it's investing a little bit more in SEO or email marketing, or hiring a new tech. What are you doing? What are you doing when those times do come to make those adjustments?
And you bring up a good point. Like, it's many times it's a strategic decision in the context of the business. And one mistake that I see is that companies will hire this marketing agency and they like leave them to their devices. Like, I don't understand that. Just do your stuff. But all the decisions in marketing need to be made in context of the business.
Yeah.
No one's going to know your business as well as you do. So that's just a note there. But
Yeah.
yeah, we got a note. So 30% is a number. So 30% of, let's say, 5,000, that's going to be about 1,500 to 2,000 a month. And so that's a good, that's in terms of an ad budget, that's a good size to be able to begin to test. That's usually around the threshold that I typically see and hear from other ad experts on, hey, this is how much you should spend to get some significant data, right? Because also, if you're spending money on ads, if you, like we talked about earlier, if you're not investing enough, you can't really tell if it's working or not. So Yeah. So any thoughts on that, Zach, for the percentage?
No, I think you covered it there for sure. I think you're good.
Perfect. All right. So moving on to the next one. And this is a question having to do with strategy. How much money should you be spending on marketing? Because there's a difference, like, hey, this is what I spend, but how much should you be spending? And again, this should and I think that this question can sometimes be triggering for some people because they spend money on marketing, but there is no return. And so it literally feels like I have to do this and money is just flying out of my pocket into this black hole and I cannot track any return on investment. So it can be triggering for some folks. But yeah, when we're saying should, it's tied to a goal. So as I mentioned earlier, what's that delta? And there's rough guidelines of what that should be. And so if anyone has any thoughts, you want to drop in on how much of a percentage of your revenue should you be spending on marketing, that's another number that you'd want to maybe get some clarity on.
Yeah. I think that what you're saying is exactly right. I mean, I feel like I sound like maybe a little bit of a broken record here, but what you said is you want to have it tied to that goal. What is your goal? I think the general goal that you can look at is, again, it is building the brand for your company. So what does that look like? What does building that brand look like? What are choices that I can make in spending on marketing and spending on other areas that are going to push towards that goal? And even better, as you are defining that out with like company values or something like that, then you can dial that in even more to, instead of just having this broad building brand, like, okay, well, what is our brand? What does our brand actually consist of? And that'll help you pick out a little bit more dialed in what you should be spending on that marketing.
Yeah, and the other thing I add too is it's the season of your business. And by season, I'm not saying the fall or spring, but season, I mean, like, are you in a season of growth? Are you in a season of maintenance? Are you in a season of you're looking to sell? All of these other factors as well will impact how much you should be spending. If you're looking to sell in a few years, maybe you just want to optimize where you're at and just really consolidate expenses so you get you get a better multiple. So it really depends on where you're at. But just to share with you some of the rough guidelines that we usually give. From what we see, let me just pop that up. Yeah, so from what we see, it's typically around 5 to 15% of revenue. And it really depends on where you're at, right? If you're in a market where there's really no one to compete with and you're the only one there, you probably don't need as much. If you're in a major metropolitan area, like where I'm based out of here in Northern Virginia, close to DC, maybe a little bit more. We have some big players, a lot of franchises swing to the area with their franchise budgets. And so it's going to depend on the area. Also, if you're a brand new business and you have no brand recognition, you probably need to spend a little more. But maybe if you have brand recognition, you have a customer base, maybe a little bit less. And so usually a rough range, 5 to 50%, 15 on the upper. I think maybe averaging around 9 to 10. But yeah, that's typically what we're seeing on our end.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think that one thing you want to think through this with is when you kind of pick out that percentage, you look at the budget for the previous year, for the year going forward, and you're thinking, okay, hey, maybe we're at 4%, or we're at 20%, or we're right in the middle, we're in that 10%. And then asking yourself a question of like, why am I at that percentage? It is somewhat arbitrary. You just pick out a percentage, you say 5 to 15%, and about average is about 10. And that's but the question, again, getting back to intentionality, is like, okay, we have chosen to be at 4%, or we chose to be at 10%. Okay, why did we choose to do that? Did we do that for a reason, or did it just happen? Did we do that because we know that you should be in this range, and that's the reason that we are there. Okay, that's good. That's better than just like we randomly threw some money at marketing and this is where we ended up. But I think asking yourself that question is really helpful in in having a direction for your business. And then I think that this is just kind of this range, though, is just accountability of if you're under that, if you're not spending anything on marketing. Okay, well, why aren't you doing that? You probably do want to grow your business. Grow your business. Probably not spending any money on marketing isn't going to help you grow. So I think like the general framework, the average here is more of an accountability. You should probably at least be here. If you're not, you probably should have a really good reason of why you're not there.
That's a really good point. And keyword just pull out is intentionality. Yeah, it's they're rough averages, but it's depending on your specific situation and whatever number you have might make sense for you. And like, you might, there's all these industry groups out there and people ask, hey, how much should we be spending on marketing? And then people just post their answers, but it's not in context of your situation. It has to be in context. And so sometimes those rough averages people give, kind of like this, is like you have to take it a step further.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So got that. And then so now I just want to talk about some of the problems with ads and even before we hop into this, Zach and I were having a conversation before and we want to say, and one of the things we were talking about was we're not saying that you should not do any ads at all. I think that there's a time and place for ads, but many times what I've seen is that, people just run with ads and that's just all of their spend. And they're kind of like trapped in this cycle. Because the second point right here with ads, you are renting versus owning. It's like home ownership versus renting an apartment, right? Renting an apartment, you can stay there, you can enjoy it, but you're not building any equity. Similarly with ads, you can enjoy it, you can get leads, but you're not building something for yourself, right? You're not going to benefit from, developing your own assets. And so for me, that's like one of the big problems, but I still think that there is a place for ads, depending on the situation. And then Zach, if you want to hop in, I know you had some other thoughts as well on that.
Yeah. So I think we've mentioned it again. Being intentional with your marketing, you have these ads and you don't want to, like exactly what you're saying. I'm not saying that you just don't do it, but what am I doing with these ads? You don't want to, if you set up ads, not only do they end up costing a pretty good amount, but if you just have ads, you're getting that customer, you're servicing that customer, and then that's it. And you're one and done. Nothing happens after that. You've spent whatever it cost you for that ad, that customer cost you that amount of money, and that's the end of the story. That doesn't seem like a great when we're talking about investment. That doesn't seem like a great investment. But you can use ads to help all of your other different strategies. So you can use ads to build your SEO by having a good campaign and having a good strategy for getting reviews. And then you can use that. John, you'd know better, all the different things that you can do here on the email marketing side. Hey, now I've connected with this customer, I've serviced this customer, I provided them a great service. We're assuming that they provided great service. And then now I have that customer's contact information. Now I can plug them into my email marketing. And then I can use that to where this isn't just a one and done customer. This is a customer that now that I get to service, 6 months from now or a year from now, or something we're going to talk about a little bit later is that I can start building this relationship, that we're going to be in this relationship with this customer for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. I mean, I work with a lot of companies that have been around for 50, 100, 120 years. And part of the reason that they're around is because a lot of those customers, maybe not 120, but a lot of those customers that they started out with back originally, they're servicing that same customer, or probably not 120, but they're servicing the kids of that customer at this point.
Yes.
So that's something to be thinking through with those ads. I want to use those intentionally to develop my other avenues, which ultimately is developing my brand.
Yeah, and I'd say maybe just to piggyback off of that, the third point right here about amplifying leaks, it's tied to the first one as well, where if you don't have everything set up, ads is like an accelerant, right? You're pouring more gasoline onto this fire, and if you're not ready, like if, let's say, I don't know, maybe that your landing page is written improperly, or maybe the CSRs that are picking up the phone, they're just not professional, or the technician that comes out, there's I don't know, a problem, or it's just going to accelerate everything. And that can be a good or a bad thing. It can be good if you want to spot all of your flaws, but it can be a bad thing if, like, hey, we're thinking about, we're going to get customers out of this, but now we're just losing more money at a faster rate. And so ads is great at speeding things up, but just be careful what you're speeding up. Maybe you don't want to speed that up. Maybe you don't feel ready for that amplifier.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I've had lots of clients that we have that were doing the review campaigns, and they are spending some money on ads. And it's like, okay, we got this person in, they're actually doing some stuff with SEO, which is great, and they're doing stuff with email marketing, that's great, but they're getting some bad reviews. It's like, okay, well, let's maybe tone that back so that we can fix the other problems and get those reined in. That way, when you are spending money on ads, you are accelerating, you're accelerating up the hill instead of like off the cliff.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I have a horror story. We used to work for this other company. They were not in the home service space. They were a biotech firm. They had a lot of investors backing them, and they wanted results quickly. So we partnered with a paid ads agency. We're helping them get themselves out there. And I mean, they were spending on some months over 6 figures on ads. And so the problem was that they didn't actually have a product that was good. And so, I mean, we're competing against like Everlywell, 23andMe, like these DNA test kits, and the product just didn't match up. And so, I mean, yeah, you got a lot of money and you're spending on ads. And we were pleading with them, like, please, like, we actually don't want to do any more marketing. Like, we want you to fix the product first. Yeah. But the pressure of an investor, they just wanted to keep on pressing on the gas. And I don't know if they're around nowadays. So it was very, very unfortunate. And so, yeah, be careful, especially, having a lot of money can really mess things up, but also with investors. But I mean, the main story is just it amplifies leaks. And so be careful where you're pouring your gasoline. So,
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So those are some of the problems. And then here's some of the things that you do want to see with your marketing over time. Number one, cost per acquisition should go down, especially if you're building a brand, you're building connections within the community, and people they're getting older and older, they're referring business. Your cost per acquisition should go down, because that's just the benefit of being in business for a long time. You just build those connections and trust. Second, we'd want to find ways to create repeat customers. And that's what Zach is an absolute phenom at. And then third is, how do we scale your sales without scaling your spend? At the end of the day, every dollar you put into marketing is not going to your bottom line. And if you're the owner, it's not going into your pocket or your distribution. And so, I know sometimes it can pain you, but, if you want to grow, like, how can you do so in a way where you don't just have to keep on spending more to grow more? What can you do to mitigate that?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Goodness. On that first point on the cost per acquisition, I was thinking something there. Like one of the things that we just talked about is it should be going down, because if you're doing it correctly, if you're building that brand and you're and you're building that brand, you're providing excellent service to all of your customers, you have the marketing dialed in to where people know who you are, then it should be going down, because you do have, it's a funny, but maybe it seems funny, but like you have that person that you work with today, and then 30 years down the road, that person, has kids, or 10 years down the road, they have kids, and they move into the same area. And now you're not having to, get them with an ad anymore. You are getting them through, through their parents, through their friends, stuff like that. And so it should be going down. And then one of the things that you were mentioning here, as far as like, scaling new sales without scaling the spend, is you, again, going back to intentionality with your marketing and investment. You kind of have, yes, you are, it is, as your company grows, is that your spend on marketing grows, because your total revenue is growing. It's, try not to think about it as a negative thing. It's just like you're talking about with investing, like in stocks or whatever it may be. Once you stop investing, that is going to stop growing at the rate that it was growing before. But as you continue to spend money there, then that's growing, which is putting you in a better spot for the future. And that's what you want to kind of do with your business, is you're spending that money to grow your business, and that is continuing to grow, and it just grows exponentially there. So I think it's important not to get caught up on like the dollars that I'm spending here, but again, thinking about it, like, where am I going with the dollars that I'm spending?
And it's that distinction of what's a cost and what's an investment.
Yeah.
Costs, it's a center, just, it's just negative on your bottom line. You just got to do it. So it's just money out of your pocket. But something where it's a wise investment, yeah, it's supposed to be a multiplier. All right, you put $1 in, ideally you get 5, 10, 20, $100 back. Shoot, I mean, if I get $100 back for every $1 I put into a magic box, man, I'd put as much dollars as I could in there.
Yeah.
So it's not about the money. It's about, hey, what do I, like you said, what do you get from it? What's that return?
Yep. Yeah. And that's where it kind of goes back to what you were saying with the previous slide, is that's where those ads can, if they're not done with intentionality, that's where they can be just that cost. They're just costing you money. They're getting you a customer, and then they don't have any real multiplier on them. It is just a cost, and that's where you want to make sure everything else is put together, so it's not just a cost.
And that just brings up one other point before we go to the next slide. I think this is where a lot of folks who feel burned by an agency come from. They see marketing as a cost because there is no return. So
Yeah.
it's actually not an investment. It's literally just, I have to do it. It's a cost. Like, it's like, hey, I have to get these insurances, and so it's like, they just like, man, I just got to do it. And so I think that's the distinction. Like, is it making you money, or is it just kind of like taking off your bottom line?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. And then some other questions to think about. And so, so just 3 questions to ask, like, what is your current return on investment on your marketing? And this actually assumes that you have some tracking in place already. And so if you don't have tracking, some simple things that you can do, you can set up call tracking just to identify, like, where are your phone calls coming from. You could set up a phone number for leads that come in through your website. If you do direct mail, like something that tracks that, or through an email campaign, you can set up a specific website for that. And then you can figure out, okay, these are all the phone calls that came from my marketing. and this is how much business was generated, because, we can look through your CRM, assuming you have a CRM, like you say, hey, this call was there, they went in there. Okay. They spent 5,000. It was a $5,000 ticket. Okay. So this is like the money that we're figuring out.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have that already in place, I think that's number one, right? Get something in place, whether it's phone tracking. There's other cool systems out there that, you want to tie it to some CRMs. You can attribute revenue. Because if you don't know, if it's just like, and I spoke to someone yesterday, they're like, hey, we're not really good with the numbers, so I don't really know. I just spend this amount and I just don't know. That can be fine, but if you really want to optimize and be a wise steward, you have to know these are the numbers that you must know, or if you have a marketing head, they need to know.
Yeah.
But that presupposes tracking.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's simple stuff when you really think about it. Like if your business isn't that much different than anything else in life. If you don't have a budget, for a personal budget, like,
Oh yeah.
then you end up spending money where you shouldn't be spending it. The same thing with your business. And then like, if in your personal life, if I think there's like a saying out there, if it's not being tracked, it's not being improved. And I think that's the same thing with the email, or with marketing in general, is if you're not tracking your marketing, then you're probably not improving it, because you have no way of knowing how to improve it. You have no way of knowing what levers to pull. I think the great thing about great thing about John, great thing about us is, if you're not good with the numbers, then we do try to work really hard, because we want to grow that for you. And we do track that stuff and keep an eye on that stuff, so that it can be improved. But yeah, I think it's good to think about, try to not make these things out to be way bigger or way crazier than they have to be. They can be really broken down and zoomed in, like, okay, if, just like anything in life, if I'm not paying any attention to it, it's probably not gonna
Yeah.
improve in any way.
Exactly. That's a great example for personal finance. I think many times our business many times is a reflection of ourselves. And so if you aren't tracking in your business, very possibly you might not be tracking it personally. It's many times they're mirrors of each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, so current return on investment, really key, just getting attribution of where folks are coming from. And if you have that figured out, are you happy with that return on investment? Is it a one-time return on investment? If you put in $1, you get $1 back. I mean, I don't know how happy I'd be doing that, because if I'm getting $1 back, then I might as well just not done nothing. We would have wasted all that activity. But in a world that it works, low ROIs, we've seen like 5 to 10 times return on investment. And so meaning like, okay, you put in $1,000, we got $5,000 and $10,000 back. I've also seen, 20 to 30 times return on investment. We put in $1, we get 30 and $20 to $30 back. And I know, Zach, you've probably seen crazier ROIs, especially with email. Like what is like, I don't know I don't know if I want to ask you what's the craziest you've seen, but I guess how can that kind of look like, especially when you leverage, these types of marketing methods?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. We see huge returns on investment. I mean, I would be sad, I would think, to see anything like under 10% or 10 times as 10%, 10 times as an average. Like, but we have a lot of times where it's like 50, 50, 60, 70 times. And that's the beauty of email marketing too, is, especially in comparison to ads, is with the ads, you're just stuck there. You're stuck at your ROI. You might put in $1 and you might get what? You might get like $5 back. Probably is pretty good, I would actually think. You might be, but it's probably lower than that. But every time you have to put in $1 to get $5 back. Period. End of story. With email marketing, with SEO, the awesome thing is you might put in $1 now and get $5 back, but 6 months from now, 3 years from now, you put that same dollar in, and now you're getting $30 back. Because the cost doesn't typically grow a ton with the return on investment. So that's the really awesome part, I think, about email marketing and SEO in comparison to a lot of other strategies. That ROI is going to continue to grow as your business grows, as your brand grows.
Yes. That's crazy. 50. I mean, that for some marketing channels, like unheard of, right? 50 to 100 times. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just the nice part is that's not where you start. The businesses that are getting, those huge numbers, they are bigger businesses, but that's the nice thing about it is again, exactly what I said. You're not stuck at this specific ratio of 1 to 5. You might start out there, but then you're gonna, as your brand grows, as you do everything else right, then that's gonna grow as well.
Agreed. And this is a slide that just sums up all we said. 10x ROI is really the bare minimum that you'd really expect. Really, it can be a lot more. 10, 20, 30, Zach, like I said, 50 and beyond. And that's really the power of what we're talking about today, and these little known secrets. And maybe some people do know it, but it's very infrequent that you'll see it consistently applied. And that's really what we're also talking about today.
Yeah.
With just quick intro, we just wanted to set everything up, but through the bios. So, my name is John Victoria, the owner of Pollyanna, digital marketer for the trade since 2016, podcast host of HVAC Financial Freedom. I'm author of HVAC Market Machine book, paperback just came out. Worked with a lot of home service companies over the years, 6, 7, 8 figures, even multi-billion-dollar companies. And so really have seen the gambit of different strategies and how they work, and worked in some pretty competitive markets. And so a lot of what I'll be sharing with you today is my experience around home services as well as SEO. And so that's it for me. Going on to Zach for your quick intro.
Yeah. So I'm Zach Barnett, and CEO of Henson Technologies. My kind of background is sales. So, and the sales and marketing, they go hand in hand. But with the Henson Technologies, our main goal, kind of getting back to everything that we've talked about, like my goal is to figure out what is the brand of Henson Technologies. So our brand is email marketing for HVAC companies, period, end of story. And we try to dial everything in to provide the best service for HVAC companies and give them the best email marketing that you can possibly get. And we work with Any Hour, we work with Barty Heating and Cooling. They're both huge companies doing awesome jobs. I mean, I'm sure people have heard of them. It's kind of hard to miss them. So yeah, that's a quickie about us.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach. Okay. And so with that, we have some principles we want to share before we get into the secrets. And this is going to apply regardless of what marketing channel that you go down. And so for the first one, this is one Zach and I thought about really closely. And this is really blended across SEO, email marketing, but it's really blended across your entire philosophy of your business. It's to be customer centric. I think the biggest mistake that I see a lot of businesses make in their marketing is that they make themselves the hero versus the guide. It's like the difference in Star Wars of being Luke Skywalker versus the Yoda. And so at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about your customers' problems. and what your customers actually care about. And so from an SEO standpoint, the problem that a lot of companies will make is like, what would I type in if I were searching for a company? But no, it's not always about what you would type in, but how would your customer try to find you? You know, whether they're just inquiring about a solution or maybe trying to select a company. How do we design things in a way that we're actually matching up with what people are looking for? And so that's the main point I want to make. And then Zach, I know you have a ton of points for customer centricity.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing is you want to be customer centric. I mean, you're an HVAC business. Like, how could you not be customer centric? That's you're in the service industry. How can you not care about people? So if you're not caring about your customers, then how are you doing your job at all? How is your company functioning? It's like a waiter who can't stand to talk to people. That doesn't make any sense. But I think that it can be easy to not think that through, because you're not necessarily always interacting with that individual. And you don't necessarily always see their face right in front of you unless you're out on the service calls. But you are, and every decision that you're making as an owner or marketing department is affecting how those customers feel about you. So you do want to have that. You want to have that customer focus, thinking about things like a customer, making decisions that make the customers feel good about you. That's going to build that brand. That's going to bring customers back to you. If you're really focusing on them.
Love that. Go to the next one. And then second, just building off of that and being customer centric is that, you know, trust takes time. Similar to like, you know, building a relationship with a friend. Same thing happens in the digital marketing world. From the SEO standpoint, you're building trust with Google. You know, like let's say we met at a networking event, you know, we'd probably introduce ourselves. We'd say, hey, this is what I'm about. You'd be like, hey, this is what I'm about. This is why I'm here. And just because we had that conversation, though, doesn't mean that, you know, you're going to be my best friend immediately and everything. So similar with Google, right? You build a website, Google finds you. It's like, oh, this is what your website is about. But it takes time to begin to get that trust and get top placements on Google. Because it's like you want to see Google is looking for consistency. Same with like a friend. Like if you have a friend who like one day he's just like really happy about something and is working on something. The next day you talk to him, he's, you know, just, bipolar and like completely different. Like, I don't know. Some people like that drama, but for me, I don't know if I could do that with a friend, and especially a trusted confidant. And so similar with Google, you know, it's building that trust in order to win those top spots since they're recommending you. And so that's it from my side. And then I know, Zach, you got some other things too.
Yeah. So exactly. You have to think about it. With our previous slide, it's customer centric because you're in the service industry, because you're building that trust. I don't think that you're going to be successful if you think about people as a one-time deal. If you're thinking about them like, I'm getting into this, I'm getting into a relationship with you, and I want to serve you to the best of my ability for your lifetime. And then, you know, the customer is thinking potentially that as well. Like, is this a company that I want to do business for at least for as long as I'm in this house? And I can't remember the last thing I'd seen recently on people moving. Actually, people move less now than they did before. So yeah, they may, as far as like moving within like 50 miles of their hometown or something, So yeah, they may move houses, but they're probably going to stay in the area. So if you can build that trust and you can look at these people as a relationship that you're going to have for a lifetime, that's going to be super, super helpful for you. And I think one of the things that we had talked about before is it's important to build that trust, because somebody might get that for that AC unit or heating unit with you, but like we're not even talking about TVs. We're not talking about something that's going to break, or your phone, which you replace every year or every 2 years. Like, we're talking about an AC unit that you're probably going to have for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Maybe 25 is a little extreme, but you're going to have it for a long time. So you're in the business of building a relationship for the long term, because you want to be servicing that unit for the next 20 years, 15 years, and then you hopefully are there to replace the unit in 10, 15, 20 years as well. And if you're not in the business of developing that relationship and building that trust, then you're not going to be the person that's going to replace that unit.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a long game, right? We're going to be in these communities, right? Families grow up, and elderly, and it's things pass on, and it's just being around. You're just going to benefit, and as long as you keep on building that trust, you're just going to benefit from that over time.
Yep.
And then the third one, and we don't have to spend too much time on this, but spoke on this earlier: owned versus rented. Again, ads is like renting your home or having an apartment, but it's fine. Like, it's great, I have a place to live, but you're missing out on the equity, decreasing costs over time. And so that's one of the big values, is that you actually now you have this website, this asset that you've built, and it shows up, and it's pretty sticky. It's stuck there. You can move from time to time, but it's pretty stuck there. And you're just generating these leads from your website, and you're not having to go through a third party or anything. It's just going to your site. And so that's the big value from owned versus just like renting ad space.
Yep. Yeah. And I would say on the email marketing side, it's like, you either, if you're not collecting any customer data when you do a job, then why aren't you doing that? That just doesn't make any sense. But I think that a lot of people, what you end up with is you collect all that data, and then you have it just sitting there, doing nothing. Why would you do that? That's like buying a house and then continuing to live in your apartment. Like, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. You have this database that you own. You should be utilizing it. You should be doing something with it, not just having it sit there and do nothing. And it goes back to that intentionality of if you're going to use ads, what's the purpose of using ads? The purpose is to help me build that database, to help me build that house. Maybe if we're thinking about it in own versus rent, this kind of like framework, it's like, okay, well, I have to rent this apartment for a couple months so that I can do some remodeling on my house. And then, but you don't just finish the remodeling and then just keep staying in the apartment. You move back into the house and you take advantage of what you've done.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's the big philosophy shift that we want to make. Yeah. Owned versus rented. It's and also the thing is that you don't know with these platforms as well, right? Facebook, there's been instances where they just ban ad accounts left and right, or Google are like, you can't be on our platform anymore, and they just take you off the ad platform. If you aren't building your own database of email contacts, or you're developing your own website, shoot, like, what happens if a third party tech giant just decides arbitrarily, hey, you don't belong on our platform anymore? What are you gonna do then? So that's another problem, right? Get kicked out of your apartment. You're like, oh God, I have a place to live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's rough.
So So cool. And then so from there, that's the three principles. And then we'll just walk through the customer journey of how SEO and email works hand in hand. So imagine that we have a fictitious guy named George. His AC is broken, looks for AC repair on Google. He goes on Google, he finds you, he clicks onto your website. He then goes to your website. He just needs to get it fixed. And so he's going to repair. I mean, you're going to come out, repair his unit, and then he hires you. And then from there, that's the SEO side. We got you the lead, we closed it. But now transitions more to the email side. So hand it over to Zach.
Yeah. So then you fill out all the customers' information. You get it into your CRM. You have it all set to go, and then what you want to do is start building that relationship with him. So you start sending George some emails so that he sees your company in front of his eyeballs. That way, next time he goes to get his system fixed, or he has to replace his system, he's not just jumping on to Google and going through the same thing that he just started with. Your goal is to get that customer and then keep that customer, like we talked about. You building that relationship, and you want to keep that relationship for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So you're sending those follow-up emails, you're getting in front of his eyes, giving him helpful information. That way, once George gets to that next point where he needs to replace his unit, get it fixed again, something like that, instead of plugging into Google, HVAC near me, or realistically, most customers probably aren't thinking in the idea of HVAC, but AC repair or something like that. They're just going, oh, where's that last email that I got from X and Y company or whatever. He's just calling the number that he has saved in his phone because he has that relationship with you. And then you service him, everything gets all taken care of. He has another great experience. Then you've just moved that dial even more to building that trust with that customer. So now you've had two great interactions. It's going to be even easier to get that third great interaction. And then you get to 4 and 5 and 6 interactions down the road. And then that, George is referring you to his friends and family because you've been taking care of him and he knows about you.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, George is golly. He's happy. He's happy. He's finally out of the heat.
Yeah. Or the cold right now.
Or the cold, yes. Yeah, and so some differences. So SEO really covers different parts of the buying journey, but I think primarily why people love SEO is that delivers ready to buy leads. And just between SEO and Google Ads, there's just a lot more trust with the organic side of things. And so the conversions are really good. Some of the data we see, anywhere from 25% to 50% of phone calls from SEO actually turn into a booked job. And so it's pretty nice. And so the conversion rates are pretty good. And also it builds trust because you have Google, this massive multi-billion-dollar entity, like, hey, this is who we recommend for your area. And so that's from the SEO side of things. And then Zach for the email side.
Yeah. So the email side is, you're building that relationship and you're building that. I think one of the things that you and I had talked about, John, before, I like the word, trying to remember exactly what you said, but like that, not omnipresence. So like you're developing that omnipresence with your customers. And there's not really a better way to do that than email marketing. Like everybody has their phone with them. Everybody has their, maybe not their computer, but they have their phone with them, which is essentially a computer. So you have that ability to get into people's houses through their phone, through their computer, and that's giving you that omnipresence there. One of the things that I was thinking about today, actually, well, I guess it was yesterday, is I was kind of looking at some different stuff, and I kept getting the same ad to add to my email, and I didn't click on it. This went on for 6 months. I didn't click on it, but it was like in the back of my mind, and I was like,
Mhm.
well, maybe that'd be a good idea. I mean, that does kind of fit with something that I would like to do, whatever. Kept getting it. Finally, yesterday, I was like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna pull the trigger.
Got
And I
you.
think that's the beauty of email, is it's just jumping in front of somebody's eyeballs and just reminding them, hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here. And maybe they don't click on it for 6 months, just like I did, but you're there for that 6 months down the road when somebody does have that issue and they're ready to go. And that's even more so in this industry, where we're talking about, if a company sends me an email, or if I see a billboard, or if I see an ad on Google, whatever it is, for repairing my AC unit, it's working great. My
Mhm.
heater's working great. Like, I'm not going to click on it, I'm not going to look at it, I'm not going to do anything with it. But if I see that, and then I see it again next week, and I see it again 2 weeks from now, and I see it again 3 months from now, and now it's 3 years down the road, and oh man, it's 110. We're in Arizona. It's 110 out, and my AC breaks. then then I'm like, oh, I did get that email. I'm gonna go ahead and just call that number and get this dialed in, versus
Mhm.
versus like calling my neighbor, or going to Google, or calling my friends and trying to find that stuff out. Oh, I have all the information, I'm set to go.
Yep, exactly that. You just never know when time's going to be right.
Yep.
So that's the beautiful part about email of that. So let's move on to the next slide. And so aside from that, how does these things play into what is called a marketing funnel? So if you're not familiar, there's different stages that someone's at before they're ready to buy with you. First is awareness. It's like before this is like they just don't know. Like they just don't know any solutions. And so awareness, like, oh, I have some problem and I'm aware of it. And that's kind of like where people start. Then after that, you move into consideration. It's now, hey, it's getting a little bit more serious. Maybe I'm comparing different companies. Maybe I'm talking to some of my neighbors, like, hey, what are some people you'd recommend? You're going through this consideration stage, and then decisions. Like, okay, I gotta make a decision now. There's an issue. And sometimes like people can jump straight to decision, right? If someone's, let's say it's a hot summer, your unit breaks down and you have someone elderly, if you have kids at home, that's life threatening. I don't have 5 months to consider what's going to go on. Someone could really get like hurt, like health wise. And so,
Yep.
so the timing of this, it really depends on the situation. But, this is generally what happens. Someone's in awareness, to go to consideration, then decision. And then from an SEO perspective, the way that this works is that you can target different keywords tied to different parts of the process. So
Hmm.
maybe awareness might be like, how do I fix this part? Or how do I fix my AC unit? That might be a broad question they might ask. Then consideration might be something like, AC repair company near me. And then decision, I mean, at that point, they already have some of the options. But then maybe there, you might have an article or something that's along the lines of what are the top 5 things to consider when hiring, an AC repair company. And like, here's some of the common things that you should consider. And so with SEO, you can get the ready to buy leads, but also you can possibly get people at different parts of the research cycle. And so you can be omnipresent for them as they search for these things. Or if you just have one of them, they come to your site and you cover all of those, maybe you can become the go-to resource and you're already positioned as the authority because you answered all of those questions. And so from an SEO standpoint, that is how you can cover the different areas of the marketing funnel.
Yep.
Yep. And then Zach, to you for any email stuff.
Yeah, I think that the big thing there on the email side is that you are um you're just continuing to have that awareness for your for your customers, is that you are continually reminding them that you're around, that you're that you still exist, and then they can kind of just go to decision when they that when they have a problem. They are not having they're aware of you, and then instead of them going into consideration of like, okay, I have this problem, what how do I fix this, they just go straight to, I have this problem and you're the guy to fix my problem.
Mm.
And that's what you're trying to develop with email marketing, and with that with that omnipresence there.
Love that. So it's really like a shortcut, right? You skip this consideration because you are the only option, right? Because you
Yeah.
are the one that's been building a relationship over time. Like there's no, it doesn't matter what your rankings are on Google at this point. It's like you are the only option because I trust you already.
Yep,
So
exactly.
beautiful. Beautiful. So we'll go to the next slide. And so with that, those are the foundational principles. And so now we're going to actually dive deeper into what are these 6 secrets now that we have the context of your marketing budget, and then how does that fit into the framework of the principles. And so now this will contextualize a lot of these secrets that we wanted to share for today. And so for the first one, this is one that I'm really excited to share. This is actually a strategy for SEO that added an additional $1 million in revenue to a business. And so if you want to check out the case study, it's right here, it's linked. But basically the principle behind this, and this is relating to the marketing funnel that I shared with you before, people have questions on each stage of the buying cycle, right? It's their awareness, like they're problem aware. And then after that, there's more to do with the consideration, like who should they hire and what are some of the factors, and there's a decision. And so what this company did, they're called Fire and Ice. What they did is that they simply answered every single question that they got from one of their customers. And then they put it on their website. It's the simplest thing, but it matches all their principles, right? It's customer centric, right? It's focusing on what they're looking for. It's building trust, because the way that they wrote these articles was not just like, hey, you should work with me, but like, hey, here's like an unbiased, like, this is how I would solve it if I was solving that problem. And so what they did is that, following the steps here, just wrote down all the questions customer asked on a daily basis. Then they blocked out a few hours every week to create content, written as well as video. They put it on their website. And because they were answering real questions that customers were asking, Google rewarded them for that, and they bumped them to the top. And this is something that they just did in house. And that's the beautiful thing. Like, you can do this today if you have that list of questions, if you have the capacity to create content. It added, and this was during pandemic too, is 2020. They had no online presence. They started doing this, added an additional 1 million in trackable revenue to their business. And so this is one secret that is almost too good to share, but it's so simple to share. But if you just do this, I'm telling you, like, you will be positioned as the go-to contractor. Google will reward you, and the numbers are there. And so if you do want to learn more about this, I did do a podcast with the people who developed this philosophy. It's called They Ask You Answer. And so feel free to check out my podcast, HVAC Financial Freedom, and look for the one with Chris Dupree, and we'll break this down in more and more. But this really is one of those. I mean, it's obvious, but it's not done. And if you do it right, it's really beautiful what it can do for your business. And so that is the first secret that I want to share. Then going off to you, Zach, for your next one.
Yeah, so I think that the next thing is, as you can see here, constant sales are bad. So I think a lot of times when people think about email marketing, or you think about marketing, you're thinking about, there's this, it's easy to think about sales. Like, what are we doing to entice people to get in here and do work with us? And through email marketing, like if that's your strategy, if you just every email that you send, everything is a sale, that's not going to be helpful. So constant sales are bad. Like one of the things that I say, I don't know, somebody probably said it, so I stole it from them, but if it's always a special, it's never a special. Like, those stores that you go into, and it always, like, what is it, Bed Bath and Beyond? Hopefully I don't get in trouble for mentioning them. You go into a store like that and it's like always like 50% off. And you're like, okay, it is standard 50% off on everything all the time. And then you go in one day and it's like 75% off. Like, okay, well, the 50% off doesn't mean anything. I'm really looking for the 75% off. And your customers, especially if you're developing that relationship with customers and and they are in front of their eyes a lot, if you're always doing sales, I mean, they're not dumb. That's what they're gonna learn, just like you learn when you go to a store and you always see a sale there. You're like, oh, this sale is meaningless. It doesn't mean anything for me. So you don't want to do that through email marketing. You want to give customers good information, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but not always doing a sale. It's not helpful. And then the nice thing about that, it does allow you to be intentional about your sales. If you are doing a special, if you're hitting a time when it's a little bit, when you're not super busy, it's not crazy, and you need that influx of work, then you have the ability to run a special. And you're like, okay, now we can pull this lever and get some extra work. And that's really nice to be able to do, but you can only do that if you do kind of train your customers that we aren't doing specials all the time. We're doing a special once every 6 months, or once a quarter. That's even starting to really push it. If you're training your customers, then you can pull that lever. And that's another thing that's really awesome about email marketing, is it does allow you to inform your customers. Like, that's what you're doing through email marketing. And then you're training them like, no, this is how we do things. We don't do sales all the time. And so when you do see a sale, you better jump on it, because that's the time to do it. And that's really nice too, because if you have that customer that's like sitting on the fence of like, oh, my unit's getting old, but like, I'm not really ready to do it. It probably could eke out another 2 years out of it. And then they see that from you and they're like, oh, these guys just don't do this very often. This is the time. This is the nudge that person needs to jump in and make that decision.
Love that. And maybe one question I have on that would be, so let's say we're sending emails out every week or every month. Like, is there a certain ratio? Like, is it like, because it sounds like there's like sales special type stuff, and then maybe there's educational. Is there like a ratio of, hey, this is how much educational to sales stuff? Or
Yeah. So I think that what we try to do is have it be probably like, goodness, if you're talking about 12 emails, 12 different emails that go to a customer, that 2 of those 12, so what is that, like 20, a little bit under 20%, 20, 17, 18% are sales, and the rest are informational. They're giving, just getting in front of customers' eyeballs, stuff like that. So yeah, like I said, informational, holiday things that is just like, hey, we exist. This isn't a holiday special, but it's like, we care about you, just like your family members, or friends send you a Christmas card. They aren't trying to sell you on getting together with them, but they're just informing you that you exist and that they care about you. You're doing the same thing with your customers.
of that. Yeah, that's a lot different than what some other people might think, like sell all the time. That's like a one out of five. You said about 20%.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That's some good intel. Beautiful. Okay, and then we'll move on to the third secret. This is one that most people, I mean, they might get an experience, but I just want to share with you the numbers. But your Google listing, so you can get on Google My Business, or they now call it Google Business Profile, and it'll generate about 70% of your leads. Like comparing your website to the listing, it's pretty significant. And so, if you want to leverage SEO in the best possible way, still do it for your website. The rankings on your Google listing are impacted by that. But really, there's a huge amount of leads that come from that, because especially with something that is, like, let's say, need based, like HOA, like my thing's broken, like I need to get it fixed. You're going to the top, people are clicking a call or the website, and then that's where you're getting a lot of it. But some easy steps to do, and a lot of this might be basic stuff. I'll add some other stuff after we go through these three. But obvious one, of course, fill out your information on the GMB listing. And what this also means is have photos that are regularly added, if possible. If possible, you take them with your iPhone, actually at the job sites or near your location. That actually sends signals to Google that, hey, this is where I'm around, or this is like my service area. And so that's one thing that's a little bit nuanced. Second, and this ties in with email, it's requesting reviews after every job. The nuance that I'm going to add here is that it's not just getting a review, but if possible, if you can somehow ask your customer to leave a review and talk about their full experience, and even maybe mention a few keywords, that's going to be a huge boost. Google takes keywords in reviews as a very, very high signal. I did a sample test. I think this is about 8 months ago. I posted 20 to 25 reviews on like a testing Google My Business account, and I got a number one ranking in 45 days because we focused on keywords in reviews. We did no other SEO. Like, it was just straight reviews. Wow. No list, like, it was so quick. And so so when I say like if you could get reviews with keywords in it, like, man, really, like, you should really try to get that if possible. And number three, regularly update your GMB with Google Posts. And so, you can mix in some of your offers, like, and all this is, there's a feature, it sets up a post that's just limited. It's kind of like Google's own social media. It's like, hey, this is what's going on with the business. Here's like a photo, here's a picture of a review, and you can add offers in there. And that has also been shown to be a significant ranking signal. And so if you can add keywords into your posts, you can add some photos that also have been taken at the location. That's really helpful at generating more signals to Google that, hey, this is where, we should be ranking in. The last sort of like ninja tip, it's not exactly white hat. White hat meaning like it's just like all's kosher with Google. But the less than white hat thing that I will share is that the more Google listings you have, the better you'll be off. Like, basically the equation is more Google listings, more phone calls. One thing that happened with Google's algorithm over the past year, and actually just the past few, like not just last year, but also the past few years, is that they're closing in on the radius of where your Google listing shows up. And so I think of it like a radio signal. At your location of the radio signal is the strongest. But like, if you're on your favorite radio station, you go too far, sometimes you can no longer listen to the music. Very similar to Google's listings. It's like you'll type in the same search term, like AC repair in Arlington, Virginia, but the further you go away, the less likely you are to show up in the maps rankings. And so a solve for that, it's challenging to do this, but a solve for this is that if you have multiple listings, it's like having multiple radio stations. It extends your signal. So it's like you have one radio station. How do I extend my signal to be in this service area, or how do I extend in this area? And so a bit of ninja stuff from the SEO world, but I really because he showed up as well. I really did want to, lay it all out on like, here's some of the true secrets that, some businesses just drive a ton of business through. So yeah, that's some of the hacks that I wanted to share for secret number 3. All right.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we've kind of talked about this throughout this podcast, but caring about your customers. Again, it seems that might be like, is that really a hack? Um, but yeah, it is because you have to think about it as developing that long-term relationship with that customer. And there's no better way to do that than to care about them. And what are some really great ways to care about that customer is you need to get into the mind of your customer, give them helpful information. So you're not just giving them you're not just giving them a sale, you're not just giving them basic information that they could never make actionable. You're giving them helpful information, things that can provide help their unit stay around longer, increase that life cycle. I think that you don't want to live in fear that that you're going to like give customers all this information and then they're never going to talk to you again. No, that you're giving them this information and then building that trust so that they will come and talk to you. So that's a huge thing. You want to think about the things that that your customers don't. It can be really easy to get caught up in the jargon and just you do this every day. It's easy to think, oh yeah, this is just basic information. I mean, everybody in the company knows this, so everybody must know it. It's like, well, everybody in the company knows it because you work there. But what are things that everybody knows that you guys all know but that customers don't? And it can be helpful, talk to your friends, talk to your family that are outside and see like, hey, this is a thing that we're familiar with. Like, is that something that, like, have you heard of that before? Oh no, I haven't. Great. That's something that we can start sending an email on to provide that helpful information. And then again, kind of touching again on what we said in the last slide for the email marketing is you don't want to have those sales all the time because you're building that relationship, you're building that trust. And if you're always running sales, you're not giving that helpful information. You're not thinking about what that your customers don't know. And they feel like they're getting shaken down and you don't want to do that. So that's really important.
All right. And I think the thing I add on top of this too is that because many times the people doing the marketing is not the company themselves. And so I think that it's like, oh, it's obvious care for your customers, but does your marketing company care about your customers or know how to communicate in that way? And so that needs to go down the chain because you can believe it. But if the people executing for you do not always feel the same way and they just have a different philosophy, then it won't translate. And so that's something that should be a key nuance as well. I just wanted to point out.
Yeah, that's really good.
All right. And then secret number 5, leveraging, this is really popular nowadays, but leveraging AI tools to cut your marketing costs. And so, I mean, if you're listening to this, you've probably seen the advent of, more accessible artificial intelligence technology. ChatGPT is the big one. And it's a really powerful tool. And I liken it to, if you remember, if you've ever watched the movie Aladdin, right? There's this guy who gets this genie lamp and he gets 3 wishes. And I liken AI and ChatGPT similar to that because really the power of this technology is in the person who's asking. Similar to the genie lamp, the power or the power of the wish of what you can get is dependent on who's going to ask the wish and what they say. And so really it's an amazing platform. And I just want to share one very practical way to easily scale your content marketing through using this tool. And so one easy way is if you have some sales objective, let's say that, we're coming up on the summertime and you want to design some campaign, just identify like, hey, what exactly do I want to do? Like, what am I trying to sell more of? And then what you can do is you can go to an artificial intelligence tool and say like, hey, I'm looking to create a sales promotion over the next 90 days. Please draft up for me an example, like 9 topics that could be relevant to write blog topics on my website. You plug that in, you send it. And after that, you can then ask it to create all these questions. And actually, let me actually try to do, let me try to actually do this live. I was debating whether I was actually going to do this live because it always, things always seem to get messed up every time I do things live, but we'll test it out. I'll show you guys real time how you can do it. So let me share my screen. And so the website is called openai.com. So I'm just going to log in. Going to sign in, and I'm going to show you like, hey, let's build some campaign, for your website, for your blogs and your SEO. So for example, let's do something like, and you guys can see my screen, right? Or for the prompt. Okay. So please create. So I'm the owner of an HVAC company. The summer is coming up. Please write for me 9 blog articles that stress the importance of maintenance and repair for people's air conditioning units. So first, they're going to design a few articles. So here's 9 blog articles, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So we got some titles, we got some description. So that's pretty nice. And then from here, so now we're designing our SEO content plan. The next thing you'd want to do is you'd want to cover any frequently asked questions. So you say something like, for each of the titles, please come up with 3 frequently asked questions and answer them. Format in a table. So, let's begin to build it out. So boom, article title, frequently asked questions, got some answers, we'll just kind of just let it roll there. So kind of like what I'm doing, as one of the promises for this webinar, I wanted to help you to better leverage SEO, but also how do you cut down costs? And so this is one way to begin to design your content in a way where you're basically building on a nice content plan covering common questions. And so sometimes this happens where it isn't finished. So you just say, please continue. And so, it's gonna fix it, but cool. So I don't know if I'm gonna make it run all the way through, but basically what you have here is now you have a content plan for your SEO. And then the next step you'd have to do though is you'd have to get a writer. The problem with using these AI tools to write your content is that Google is obviously smart enough to detect AI content, and they don't like that. And so the way that we use it and the way that you can streamline your process is that use this to design the content brief, or like, what are the requirements for the articles you want to create for your SEO? And then boom, you have this big list of stuff. You have the titles, frequently asked questions, some answers, and then, yeah, you really are able to streamline costs and get things going. And then I guess the last thing I'll share on this before we move on is you can use this to help write your SEO content in a way that actually converts people into customers. And so there's copywriting formulas that are out there. So you can ask, let's say, please share with me a copywriting formula. So this copywriting is just about how do you write in a way that's persuasive and get people to make a decision. And so here's one. So there's ADA. It just stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. And what you can do now is like, please use the ADA formula to draft up an article for one of the suggested titles. And then boom. So attention, do you dread opening this? Interest. And so I just want to show you what could be possible, how it supports your SEO. Again, don't use this just right out of the box, but as you can see, it's very powerful. In less than 5 minutes, we built out a content plan, and really, I really did promise, like I did want to share with you guys some secrets on this webinar. So
yeah, that's pretty awesome.
So that's all I wanted to share. I hope that that helps some folks. But yeah, so cool. I'll bring it back. And yeah, so you'll actually get an actual human writer to write this. You'll continue to post it. You match up with my first strategy around answering questions that customers have, and then boom, you don't even need a company, like still you can work with one, but like that's some magic right there that you can really do. So that's secret number 5.
Yeah,
and
that's
then,
pretty sweet.
Yeah, and so I'll switch off to you for the last secret.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked about it through here. It's probably not a secret anymore, but customer relationship. I think the one of the points on here is maybe something people don't think about a lot, but you want your customers to know who you are. You want to develop that omnipresence, like we talked about. Email marketing is a great way to get in front of all of your customers' eyeballs. Even if you can send somebody an email, they can only read the title or the subject line and maybe see a view and delete that email. And you're still progressing the dial. I think that is something that people don't think about. Like, you look at the emails that you send out and you're like, oh, I'm not getting very many opens. This is worthless. It's like, no, it's not worthless, because you still got in front of your customers' eyes. Until they unsubscribe, like, they're still keeping your email and you're still making them delete it, and you are still getting in front of their eyeballs. Now, with that said, you want to be careful about that, because you are making them delete it. So you don't want to be annoying. And that's where this customer relationship is you want to get in front of their eyeballs, and you want to remind them that you're there, you care about them, but you also want to be respectful of that relationship and not annoy them. So, having one of the things that we do is we try to be really intentional about the emails. And I think that it's really important if you're going to do the email marketing yourself, you want to be intentional about that and make sure that you're dialing that in and you're sending your customers, not more than 6 emails in an 8-week period. So in two months, that's like the maximum that we try to do. That's just enough to be in front of their eyeballs, but not too much to be annoying. This is not a one and done relationship. You're not getting that customer and doing that one job and then never interacting with them again. Email marketing is a great way to ensure that it's not a one and done relationship. And I think this last point is something that a lot of people don't think about, is you have like 80% of your database is not active. And I think that goes really well with, I think it was like your third secret, where you said 70% of your jobs come from like Google in some fashion. And that, I mean, those line up perfectly. That means that only 30% of your jobs are coming from current customers. And there's a little bit of flexibility in those numbers. But if you look at it, like 80% of your customers aren't active. That's 80% of your people that you can just jump out there and start getting jobs from without having to do anything. other than send some nice emails that are thoughtful. So that's the great thing about email marketing, is turning that 80% of unactive customers into, you know, into where you only have 60% to 70%, even going from 80 down to 70. That's a huge, that's it. I mean, that's a 50%, that's a 50% increase on the jobs you're getting. That's a crazy return on investment. And that's where we're talking about, like, SEO, email marketing really give you that crazy return on investment you can't get anywhere else.
Amen to that. And that's yeah, just looping back to the start. That's what it's all about, right? It's marketing, we're making an investment. How do we be wise stewards of our capital? How do we grow? How do we not just make it a cost center, but how do we really grow and accomplish some of our growth objectives with what we choose to do? So with that, I think that brings us to the end. And I think we're ending right around 3:30. And so what I'll do is I'll just put this last slide up here. I'm gonna stop the recording, and then if there's any questions anyone wants to cover, feel free to. But maybe Zach will do a quick goodbye to everyone, and then Megan, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer it. But yeah, for everyone on the recording, just want to say thanks so much for hopping on. Hope you learned something new. Really, the goal was really to show you behind the scenes on some really cool things that you can apply to your business. Some of it is really simple, but just because it's simple does not mean it's not effective. And just because it's simple does not mean that everyone's doing it too. Sometimes the simplest things and the most obvious are the things that it just gets by people. And it's just consistently doing the basics. That's really, because you do that consistently over time, taking care of your customer, helping build your brand, being a wise steward of your capital, just doing that consistently over time. That's going to make a huge difference in your business. Because some people, they're just, there's like a flash in the pan, right? They're just like, they're all big and then they're gone. And so if you could just do these simple things, really, we've seen some amazing things in terms of ROI and growth of companies. So any last things you want to interject, Zach?
Yeah, I think the last thing I would add in there, I think just kind of like some takeaways from here is, developing that omnipresence and being intentional. If you're kind of like zoom everything into maybe 2 points, I think that's what you're really looking for in email marketing or email marketing, SEO marketing altogether. And again, like John said, that might seem simple, like being intentional. Yeah, I mean, duh. But then,
Yeah.
but then really thinking about that, like, what does being intentional mean? What does that all entail? That's where you really want to spend your time thinking. So yeah,
Awesome.
I would just condense it down into those 2 points, and then don't leave it at that. Don't leave it at, oh yeah, that's simple, to be intentional. Great. Woo. You want to really like think through what does that mean? And that's where it stops being so simple.
Agreed. Yeah, it's the nuances that really make the difference. But awesome. So we'll end the recording here. Thank you everyone for hopping on. And then for anyone who's left, so we'll do any questions. So let me just stop it, and then we'll do some questions. So